All right, Chris Van Vliet, welcome to the Happy Hustle Podcast, my brother. I am super stoked to connect.
Dude, I'm stoked. And how can you not be happy when you're on the Happy Hustle podcast?
I know, right? Well, we have a lot to chat about today, man. You are a four-time Emmy Award-winning TV host, entertainment reporter, content creator, entrepreneur, and happy hustler. And I'm excited to dive into the art of the interview and discussing your journey and really, how people out there, specifically the happy hustlers who want to create content, want to spread their message and really become a better reporter of what's working in their lives and extracting knowledge from others. I feel like this is a really hot topic that the happy hustlers are going to get a ton out of. So I'm excited to dive in. But before we get into all that good stuff, Chris, what is something interesting about yourself that not too many people know?
I think one of the big things to you listed off all these great accolades, and thank you so much. I'm just trying to keep up with you, seriously.
Yeah, right.
Come on. My goodness. I also own a fishing company, so super passionate about bass fishing. And I've always been one of those people that when I'm passionate about something, like I dive all the way in. Like I don't check the depth of the water. I don't check the temperature of the water, just dive all the way in. So bass fishing's been a huge passion of mine since I was 4 years old. Caught my first fish. I was hooked, pun intended.
Yeah.
And
now
my best friend Aaron and I, we have a bass fishing Tungsten brand called Woo Tungsten, WOO exclamation mark Tungsten. We sell tungsten fishing weights for bass fishing. So I think that might be something that if you were to go to my Instagram and see these interviews with Jamie Foxx and Adam Sandler and Jeff Goldblum and The Rock, you might not assume. Yeah, you might not assume that I also own a fishing company.
That's hilarious, dude. I mean, I love fishing. So you're speaking my language, being an avid outdoorsman. I don't do bass fishing in Montana. I do trout fishing, fly rod typically.
Sure.
But I appreciate bass fishing. And, when I'm in Florida, I bass fish. So it's definitely, something we can connect on and maybe go fishing someday, when you come visit.
I'll send you some of our never chip fishing weights, our never chip flipping weights, some of our InvisiShot drop shot weights, and you'll be all set for the next time you go bass fishing.
I'm ready, man. I'm ready. Well, let's talk about some of your actual experience, because you talked about some of these people that you've interviewed, which is like such a crazy hit list of celebs. And I know people can get enamored by that one facet of CVV, right? Chris Van Vliet, which is, I like that, the CVV. But I want to kind of rewind the track a little bit. Like, how did you get involved in the entertainment world, in reporting and becoming a TV host? Typically, I'll tell you this, I don't go too deep into people's backstories because I feel like people don't really care. People just want to know the value that you can extract from your journey. But I do want to hear yours because it is interesting to me. How'd you get here? So let's hear it.
Well, I agree with you that I think it's interesting to find the value in someone's story, because so often we just see the finished product. We just see someone like at the finish line or towards the finish line, and we're like, well, I could never do that because look at them. But when you actually break it down from, where they came from, you go, oh, wow, well, I'm where they were 17 years ago or whatever. So For me, I was just always really passionate about broadcasting. I loved radio and I loved television. I had a Fisher Price tape recorder when I was a kid, and I would actually pretend to be the radio host that I heard on the radio. That's kind of where it began. And I always really looked up to these TV hosts on TV. Like we'll take it way back here, like Roger Lodge hosting Blind Date. Like I thought that show was just so so good. And of course, Alex Trebek hosting Jeopardy. I loved it. I grew up just outside of Toronto, so I was Canadian. There's not a ton of opportunities in Canada to do television there. I think you kind of really have to start with the few local TV news stations that they have there. And that's where I got my start. So long story short, I went to college for communication studies. I was having the best time living with four of my best friends, and, feel like going to class felt secondary to just the social stuff that we were doing. And social stuff being like drinking beer and vodka. But at the in my final year, right, of course, in my final year, it hit me. I woke up one day with 7 months to graduate. And it hit me, Carrie, like a ton of bricks. We were going to have to work at the end of this year. When we graduated, that was it. There was no more like, do I feel like going to class, or like, where are we going to the bar tonight? It was, you got to go work for the rest of your life. And in that exact moment, I decided I didn't want to hate my job. I didn't want to be one of those people who couldn't appreciate Sunday because Monday morning was like looming. Ooh. So I reached out to every radio station and every TV station in my college town. And I just said, hey, passionate about broadcasting. I'm a communication studies major. Could I just come in and see how it's done in the real world? And one radio station brought me on their street team, and I handed out like stickers at events. This other TV station was like community run. So like you volunteered to work there, and it was great. I did everything behind the scenes, like as a floor director and a VTR, audio, camera operator, all of it. And then this other radio station said, well, we don't take on volunteers, but how would you like a job? And I went, oh my gosh. They said, well, it only pays $8 an hour. I said, yeah, that's $8 more than I thought I was going to make. And that's really where it began with like, and I think that there's a real story there of like, what value can you bring? At that time, all I had was, I can give you my time. Can I trade my time for some experience? And I knocked on enough doors, sent enough cold emails, made enough phone calls that eventually enough no's became one yes.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, man. I mean, you said something that I just want to echo, which is most people are actually like not enjoying their Sunday because they're dreading their Monday, right?
Yeah.
And that is, in a nutshell, what the happy hustle is all about, truly. Like putting the happy in your everyday hustle, where you get up excited about what you get to do, not what you have to do, you know? And I think you hear with Chris's story, it's like he was passionate about, you know, being a on-camera presence. It has many different formats for you. I know, you know, you do TV hosting and you have your YouTube channel, you have your podcast, but that it was something he latched onto, that passion. And for all the happy hustlers out there listening, I'm curious if there's someone out there who maybe hasn't discovered what truly they want to be doing, or that passion, right? Maybe right now they're settling. Maybe they are dreading their Mondays. What would you say to that person in order to dive deeper into what really excites them and start to take that leap of faith into a life that they love?
I would say just start to lean into the things that really juice you, that really excite you. We've all seen those memes online of like 5 a.m. waking up for work, and it's someone like barely getting out of bed, and 5 a.m. waking up for, you know, fill in the blank here, whatever it is. We were talking about fishing earlier. So maybe it's fishing, or it's hunting, or it's running a race, whatever it happens to be. I would say start to lean into those things. The worst thing you can do is quit what you're doing now and try to chase something. I would never recommend that, but I would say that when you're done with work, start to lean into the things that really excite you. And we live in a time now where we have these supercomputers in our pocket, and, you know, quite literally anything is possible. You can monetize anything. So I'd say lean into the things that excite you. And if you want to monetize that, find somebody in that space that is absolutely crushing it, and then reverse engineer back to where you're at. So maybe they're at step 64 in the process and you're at step 1. Figure out what their step 2 was and their step 3 was. And I would say just start to go from there, but, you know, be patient with it. And if you absolutely dread going to your job every single day, I would ask you, like, what's more important? Is it being happy or kind of happy every day? Or is it making some money and having decent benefits? Like, would you take a $5,000 or $10,000 pay cut to be happier and to enjoy what you're doing, even if it was just 5 or 10% more?
Yeah, that is the question, truly. You know, for me, like I've seen it in my own life, like more money truly doesn't equal more happiness. Like I've reached that level where it's like, I got everything I really need, you know, pretty much, you know. Of course there's more like philanthropic things that I want to do, that more money does equal more impact. So I'm still happy hustling towards those bigger goals. But I read an interesting stat. It's like the actual income where your happiness is no longer correlated with the money that you make is like $86,000 a year take home. Isn't that crazy?
I read that
it's
same
like so
study,
much lower.
but,
I think
it
it's
makes
86.
sense because Because outside
What
of
is it?
like the Lambert, it's around there, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, outside of the private jets and the Lamborghinis, like if you're making $86,000 a year, you're able to buy pretty much anything that you'd need, anything you'd want.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just something like I want everyone out there to really assess what Chris is saying. Like, you know, would you settle or for a life that you're not really fulfilled with? Um, or would you rather be happy every day, you know, but take a little less? And it's like, for me, that's an easy choice. I think if, you know, if you can make less but be happier, there's no question. And I saw this in my travels too when I was like overseas in Thailand for close to a year. You see people living with absolutely nothing, you know, and they're happy as heck. You know, they're just like they're playing soccer with the trash can ball of like just like matted up shirts, and they're just living, you know, free and barefoot.
Yeah.
It's like most of the world actually lives on $1 a day. That's what's crazy too. If you look at it's like over 3 billion people live on $1 a day, and so you think about like how much you actually have. Like you are the 1% in the global scheme. It's just shifting your perspective oftentimes, you know. So anyway, that's just something I wanted to mention. One thing I'm really interested with you, Chris, is getting into the interviewing art and science behind it. And I know you are very deliberate with the questions you ask. And this is something that I know that happy hustlers can benefit from because ask better questions, you get better answers, right? Tell us a couple of your favorite questions.
I think it's ask better questions, get better answers, not just in interviews, like whether it's a podcast or it's a YouTube channel, that's in your life too. So we'll talk about that
Hmm.
certainly, you know, more during this conversation, but I kind of realized, so I've been so fortunate to be able to interview some of the biggest stars in the world. And I listed some of them earlier, but I've been doing this for my entire career. And I realized early on in my career, especially when they're like promoting a movie, they're doing sometimes 30, 40, 50, 60
Mm,
interviews in a day. A lot of times they're getting asked the same question in the same
yeah.
way. And I would sometimes just take those questions and just spin them on their head a little bit. So you're asking the same question, but you're getting a very different response. So I'll give you a great example of like kind of an aha moment early on. I think the cliche question that a lot of people will ask is, what was it like working with so and so? What was it like working with Steven Spielberg? What was it like being on set with Tom Cruise? It's such an open ended question that usually ends up getting a response like, oh, they are just the best. It was such an honor to work with them. Dream come true every day. But that's not a real answer, right? So I started kind of flipping that and going, how can we go like just one layer deeper on that? And I started phrasing the question in this way. I would say, what's one thing you learned from working with Steven Spielberg that you'll now take with you to the next set that you go on? And that makes people go, oh, wow. And oftentimes you will get a story from them that they've never told before ever. And that's kind of the whole point here when you're doing these celebrity interviews is you're trying to, like, they've done so many interviews, you're trying to get them to say something they've never said before. And I started taking that into my own life of like the questions that you're not that you're just having in conversations, but questions you're asking yourself. And to kind of circle back to what we were just talking about, when you're a kid, the question that every kid gets asked, and you can say it with me, everybody knows it, it's what do you want to be when you grow up? And something shifts when you grow up. I'll put that in quotes because I don't think any of
Yeah,
us have actually grown up, right? We're just figuring this out still. The
true.
question shifts to what do you do for a living? What do you do? So it shifted from what do you want to be to what do
Yeah.
you do? And I find that so
Mm,
fascinating that we're now defined, a lot of us, by a job that we do that we don't even enjoy doing. And I
mm.
think the question for a lot of people is at what point did you switch over and stop living your own journey? And I think that that's a really interesting question. I think we should all be asking.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. That is like so evident in every networking event or every, you know, mastermind or every whatever conference you see people and they're just, what do you do? That's like that's the
Yes.
go-to. I like to say, what are you most excited about right now? Or what are you
That's
passionate
such a
about?
great
Or,
question.
you know,
Yes.
like you know, what makes your heart sing? I like to ask. And they're like, what the
Mm,
heck? My heart sing? I mean, it hasn't sung lately. I don't know. I forget. You know, it's like what brings that childlike wonder? You know, that those are the
yeah.
questions that I like to lean into that get them thinking. Like you said, what's one thing you learned from working with so and so? I think that is a really great way to flip it on its head. The the truth is, you know, when you ask these different questions, you actually like elicit a different part of someone's brain in their like chemical response. It's a
Yes.
completely different shift in terms of what you're getting back. And they say like 74% of all communication is nonverbal, so you can actually see them light up physically and just, oh, whoa, okay, now I got something. I gotta like, you know, perk up. This person's actually maybe interested in me, not what can they get from me. Do you find that a lot?
Yeah.
I'm sure I know you live in, you know, California and in the LA scene. It's like when I was living in West Hollywood, I could just tell every person had an angle, you know, like every
Oh
person wanted
yeah.
something. It's like, you know, especially when you lead with, what do you do? It's like, well, they
Yeah.
probably want to see, what can I get from this person? You might as well just ask that, you know, how can you help me? You know, it's like,
Yeah, yeah, and it's not what can I, so many people are asking like what can I get from you? And they're not asking it, but they're, implying
yeah.
what can I get from you rather than what can I give? And I've
Mm,
just always my entire career just always wanted to lead with value. And I think that that's why you've been so successful is you lead with what can I give to you? What can I bring to this situation, this conversation, this mastermind, whatever it happens to be.
yeah. Well, I appreciate that, man. I think that is something now that I even look for in people I bring into my inner circle, is like that giver mentality. The taker mentality is a dime a dozen. It's everywhere.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
there's all, and you know, truthfully, I can tell when I was younger, like early on the come up, just hustling hard with my tech startup in New York City. Like I know I was more so the taker mentality, like, ooh, what can this, how can I get this person to do this? And I recognize how ugly that is. You know, long term looking back, it really, it's a turnoff, you know, because now
Yeah.
when I'm on the other side of people, hey, let me pick your brain. It's like, my brain does not need picking. You know, it's okay as it is. You know what I mean? It's like, what would you say to someone who maybe is on that come up and is maybe in that taker mentality? How would you frame a reshift to them?
A good friend of mine was talking about how important it was to kind of level up by buying your way into situations that you may not have had access to. So, like, he bought his way into a mastermind when maybe he couldn't have afforded it, but that was a huge level up for him that allowed his business to scale. And I think that that's a really important thing. Like, find somebody who's doing the thing that you want to do. And if you can't pick their brain, and I think that, I can understand why someone's not going to be willing to give up half an hour or more of their time to just have their brain picked. Maybe you could incentivize that with,
Yeah.
or maybe you could go somewhere where they're speaking and try to pull them aside off the stage. But I would say try to put yourself in the places where the people that you want to be like are. So if that's a mastermind or if that's a conference or even if it's an online thing, like try to put yourself where those people are. And yeah, sometimes that might cost some money, whether that's a mastermind or that's an admission ticket, but it's not just going to come to you. And I think I learned really early on in my life that if someone is willing to say yes, whether that's to a job interview or whether that's to a podcast interview or whatever it happens to be, then it's on you to find a way to make this thing happen. And I think that too many people will ask, the person will go, yeah, I mean, if you're ever in Atlanta, sure, we'll make this happen. And then the conversation ends there. And I
Mm.
think that it should go one layer deeper where you go, oh, well, great. Well, I'll be there next week. Actually, I got my very first internship on television by doing this exact same thing. I lied, Carrie. I lied to get my first internship. I scoured the internet to find the general manager's email address for this TV station that was about an hour away from my hometown. It was in Peterborough, Ontario. And I wanted an internship because I knew an internship after I graduated would lead to hopefully give me the experience that I needed for a job. And nobody was getting back to me. So I scoured the internet, found his email address, sent him an email and said, next week is spring break. I'm going to be in town. It'd be great if I could come by and just talk to you about a possible internship. And he wrote back and said, well, if you're going to be in town, sure. We don't usually do this, but sure, come on by. It was a total lie. I hadn't been to that town in like 10 years,
Yeah,
but I was
yeah,
making myself, I was going to put myself there. So I was trying to
yeah.
make it more difficult for him to say no. And it ended up working out. That internship turned into a job, which kind of snowballed the rest of everything.
Yeah, well, that's so funny. I mean, I have a very similar story with
Oh,
Dan
yeah?
Millman. I don't know. Do you know Dan
Yeah,
Millman,
I
best-selling
do.
author
Not
of The
personally, but
Peaceful
yeah,
Warrior?
of
Yeah,
course.
so his books changed my life. I actually even
Mm,
got Peaceful and Warrior tattooed on me just because I took it to heart that much. But
wow.
it shaped my trajectory. And I went to one of his conferences. I paid for a VIP ticket. I got like, uh, a whole gift thing together for him, a handwritten note, all these things. I paid for the VIP to sit front row, got the mic at the end for like one question, just broke down, just started crying. And then, so he gave me like a couple minutes at the end of the conference to just chat with him. And I was like, well, hey, I'm actually going to be in New York next week. Would love to take you to pie. I know he loves pie. I know he lives in New York. And
Yeah,
I know that from research, which research is a very important point here. People, Chris
absolutely.
did his research. I did my research. That's how you get in the door oftentimes, by doing the research. And I had no business being in New York. I was definitely not going to be there. But he's like, yeah, if you're going to be here, we'll get pie. So I went and had pie. That meeting led to me optioning the rights to The Journey of Socrates, like his script. I was going to make a movie on it and play the lead because I really loved his books and I wanted to make that one into a movie. Still might, but it just it got a little bit weird at the end. His daughter wanted to do the screenplay adaptation and make some key changes to the script that I didn't want to make a movie that was different from the script of the book. So
Yeah.
anyway, we ended up not going through with it, but I still, I'm still friends with Dan, and then just would call him a mentor and a really great, um, you know, light in my journey, because he was that. And I just think it's important. The take home for everyone out there is put yourself in those right situations, those environments, to be successful, to have opportunity strike, right?
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
never know what's going to happen.
Those opportunities are not going to come if you're just sitting back. And I feel like it's so important to put yourself out there and make these opportunities then come to you because you're there. Go to the
Yeah.
opportunities.
Yeah. Oh, attack it. I like it. Now, Chris, I do want to talk to you about like your content creation process. Right now you hear the cliche phrase, content is king. We're
Yeah.
we're really in the attention era of just attention is the currency, right?
Yeah.
And for someone like you who has amassed millions and millions of views and followers and all these things, like, what is your content creation process when you have content to create? Break down that creative process for us, and maybe the biggest mistake you see content creators make.
For me, it starts with the podcast/YouTube channel. So it's the long form. This is like Gary Vee's been preaching this for so many years. Like, take one long piece of content and then break it up into like a bunch of little pieces. So
Mm.
one big podcast for me goes on my podcast called Insight with Chris Van Vliet, which you were recently a guest on. So thank you so much for that. It's also on my YouTube channel. So my YouTube channel has 323,000 subscribers. But those are long, they're like hour long, 45-minute long conversations. So I started taking just the clips. And Tony Robbins always says success leaves clues. And I was seeing that like Joe Rogan had a channel just for clips, 3 to 5 to 8-minute clips. Impulsive, Logan Paul had a channel for just these clips. And, we could name 100 other clip channels. And I was like, well, if they're all doing this, there's something there. I should be doing this too.
Yeah.
So I started a clips channel. I call it CVV Clips. It's just the most interesting, memorable, funny moments from all my interviews. So the long interview gets broken up into 3, 4, 5 clips that go in the clips channel. And then I break up those clips into 5 to 10 different reels, TikToks, shorts, whatever you want to call them. Like, the vertical video right now is where all of the attention is. Like, all of the attention is on those TikTok style videos. And that's why YouTube has gone all in on these shorts. So it's kind of, for me, it's and And even though I said it like goes from big to small, I feel like when it gets posted online, it then goes from small to big. I hope that somebody finds my 20-second TikTok video that leads them to maybe watching a 3 to 5 to 8 minute clip. And then maybe that leads them to listening to the entire podcast. So I think the biggest mistake that people make is they make one piece of content and then assume that that is enough. And I think that you can't make enough content. It's like, it's the old thing of like taking the wad of spaghetti, throwing it at the wall, and maybe only one or two pieces will stick. But in this world of content creation, if one or two of those pieces of spaghetti that are hanging on the wall are 2 or 3 million views, that's a lot of eyeballs on your content and your message. So that's what I've been doing. And I think another big mistake is I thought I could do this by myself for a long time. And it wasn't until like about 1.5 years, 2 years ago that I brought other people onto the team that were helping me out. And I learned a really valuable lesson in that. And that, sure, I could, I mean, I know how to edit. My editing skills are like a 5 out of 10, but why not pay someone who's an expert in this, a master in this? Why not pay them for their time and their expertise instead of me trying to fumble along and make it look like a 5 out of 10 editing job or a 5 out of 10 audio editing job? So that was a really big lesson for me, is learning that like, you can't do this alone. And a big thing you need to do is say, hey, could you help?
Apologies for the interruption, my fellow happy hustlers. However, I want to inform you that the last part of this interview, for some reason, the file got corrupted in Riverside, which is the platform I use to record these episodes. And we reached out to Riverside support. They said the backup file got corrupted too, and there's nothing we can do. But the episode was so good, and Chris is such an awesome dude that I wanted to share it with you anyway. So my deepest apologies for the choppiness, and my editor Chan really brought it on this one to pull together the best listening experience, but it is a little choppy and I apologize. Stick with it and you'll get value. I know you will, but I just want to say this little quick message so you know that the second half of this interview has some areas where the file got corrupt, but nonetheless, there's still a bunch of value to be gained. So let's get back to this episode. Thanks again. Really great stuff here, man. I do want to get into some of the more traditional happy hustle questions.
Let's do it.
Before I do, I know people are going to be like, where the heck can I like go listen to Chris's podcast and check out this YouTube channel and learn more? Give us a couple places where you can be best found online.
So wherever you're listening to this, you can also listen to my podcast, Insight with Chris Van Vliet. You can check out the interview that I did with Carrie. So I imagine these will be dropping around the same time. Woo!
Yep.
You can also go to my website, chrisvanvliet.com, and then it's just my name on all social media. So VANVLIET.
Yeah, guys, definitely check that out. We'll link it all up in the show notes as well. Now, Chris, I want to start with what I call happy hustle hacks. So these are a tip, a tool, a tactic, maybe something you do in this discipline that maybe is a little unique. And first, I like to talk about health. You know, you cannot happy hustle in any capacity if you don't have your health in check. I know you're in great shape. You take care of yourself. What would be a happy hustle hack in this arena that you could share with the happy hustlers?
I don't really drink coffee. I'm not a coffee drinker. So my day starts with going to the gym. So that's a really big one for me. And I'm sure you're familiar with Wim Hof, and I've become like very fascinated with Wim Hof breathing and cold therapy. So every day I do Wim Hof breathing as part of my morning routine. And my goal this year, I mean, we're midway through August right now as we record this, knock on wood. My goal was to not get sick in 2022. And I would always just get a lingering cold or a lingering runny nose. Like every other year I would get it. It would like last for like 2 weeks. So my goal this year was to not get sick. And I really, truly believe that Wim Hof breathing has been like the foundation of why I've been feeling so well. And also I think it's, obvious, goes without saying, but like getting sleep is so crucial.
Yeah, that's awesome. I ran a biohacking company for like 3 years, and we had Wim on our podcast, our biohacking podcast, before he was even like really blown up. And yeah, he's the man. There's something to be said about, breath work, energy, cultivating that chi, just being very, in tune with your body. And I have another friend of mine who hasn't been sick since 86, and he is a energy healer. And so I do a
Wow.
form of energy work every day that he taught me. He's like a Reiki healer. And yeah, he was like a sniper in like the Hungarian army, and like went through this whole like, you know, process of like just becoming just a very in tune energy healer. So yeah,
Wow.
it's there's something to be said about it, right? Breath work,
Yeah.
energy, and just protecting, yourself and your immune system, and sleep, obviously, which I'm running low on right now. I'll tell you straight up. Um,
You need it.
I really
You
prioritize my
know that. You
sleep.
need it.
Oh,
Yeah.
dude. 100%. I had my playoff soccer game last night, was getting after it. And then my dog, I mentioned it, but he's not doing so good. So we're up like 3 times a
Yeah.
night, taking him out. It's just, it's like,
Oh,
it's
wow.
tough, but
Yeah.
it's part of the circle of life, life and death. But anyway, let's dive into money, because I like to talk about, a happy hustle hack in this arena. Maybe something, Chris does to save or invest or spend wisely that you could share with the happy hustlers around money.
It's just the simplest thing. And you've heard it so many times, but it's pay yourself first. It's get
Hmm.
paid whatever day of the week or days of the week it happens to be, and put that aside, whatever amount that is, 10%, 15%, whatever it happens to be, and pay yourself first. And I think that too many people do the opposite. They get paid, they pay all their bills and all the other things, and
Yeah.
then they look at what's left over and they go, "Oh, cool, $227 in the bank. Let's go out to
Yeah.
dinner tonight." So
Yeah.
I'm sure your audience isn't like that, but I think it's just so important to pay yourself first.
Yeah, yeah, really great point there. There's actually a book about that topic, which I recommend. And it goes for me automatically. Like I think if you want to read one really good money book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. Have you read that book by chance?
No, I'm going to write that down right now.
Oh, dude, great read. I recommend it to everybody. Set up your money system, and it's a how to automate all your finances, so
Hmm.
that like at like every month, it just like a series of events happen in my accounts that just
Yeah.
hands off,
And,
oh,
and I
it's
think
been
that
a
there's
game changer.
like if you get paid X amount of dollars every, let's call it every second Friday, and all of a sudden there was a new tax that came in and you were making 10% less, you'd go, "Man, that sucks, but that's the way it is." Well, what if you just, implemented that tax yourself? You called it the carry tax, you called it the Chris
Yeah.
tax, and you implemented it
Yeah.
that yourself. That's what I started doing. And, much
Yeah.
like what you're saying, it's a game changer.
Oh, for sure. 100%. Now, I do want to ask you about spirituality. I believe in a higher power. I think it's really important to have faith in something bigger than yourself, not necessarily one God or another. Like, I don't care what people believe in. I just care that they believe, right? That's, in my opinion, in order to be a happy hustler, you have to have that spiritual component. What would you say is a happy hustle hack in this arena for Chris? Maybe something that you do here that, you could share with the happy hustlers.
The biggest thing for me is just starts with gratitude. And I wake up
Mm,
every day, I say out loud 3 things that I'm grateful for. I do it before I go to bed at night. And it's actually the last question I ask in every interview that I do, because I think that if you can focus on the things that you do have rather than focusing on
mm,
the things that you do not have, it's
mm.
impossible to be upset. It's impossible to be
Yep.
upset when you're coming from a place of gratitude. So that's a super simple hack that anybody can do. I mean, if you don't have 10 seconds to do that, if you can't list 3 things you're grateful for, you're not looking hard enough.
Oh yeah. Amen to that, brother. I write down 5 to 10 things every morning in my
Love
journal
that.
as well. And I just think practicing an attitude of gratitude will
Yeah.
just reshape your whole reality. So I'm all about it. Now, Chris, I do want to put you through the rapid fire round. And this is where I ask you random things and you answer honestly. First thing that comes to mind. Are you ready?
Let's do it. Okay.
All right. Favorite food? Go.
Pizza.
Favorite movie?
Back to the Future is the greatest movie of all time.
Favorite book?
It's The Four Agreements. That's a life-changing book. It was hard to narrow down to
Favorite
just
person?
one.
I know.
My,
I know. Favorite person you've interviewed?
the Rock. And like The Rock is
Yeah.
everything you want him to be. Like you see him on Instagram or in movies as this larger than life character. And then you meet him and he has an energy that fills up a room. He's kind, he's funny, he's charismatic, but he's self-aware enough to know that this is a big moment. He realizes the position that he holds and he makes the moment really special. He brings you into that moment and makes the moment about you.
Yeah. Well, I'll interrupt the rapid fire round to tell you, I actually worked on HBO Ballers as an actor, just like, small role, but was chatting with him for a while, took a piss next to him and the other lead. Great dick, by the way. No, I'm just kidding. That's too much. Anyway, my fiance,
John David Washington, is that who you're talking about?
No, the white guy from Ballers, who's like his like quirky agent friend.
Rob Corddry.
Yeah. So, and then my fiance is she's worked on with The Rock multiple times. He and her actually had multiple text messages and like before I was a thing with her, and I look at her phone. Oh, who's this Dwayne guy that keeps hitting you up late night? I'm like, what the heck? So the whole funny thing is, I actually beat The Rock out for her. I always like to say, So who knows what really was taking place? But they're friends and they work together.
Wow. Okay.
So anyway, that's my Rock story. But he is a great dude. So I give shout out for that. Anyway, let's get back to rapid fire round. Favorite workout? Go.
Chest days. I just love chest day. It's so cliche.
I can tell those pecs, bro. Anyway, best business advice.
Just start. I think that's the biggest thing is like, I think there's a lot of people who are on the cusp of doing something great and they will never end up doing it because they're too scared of what could happen. It's like, just start and figure it out as you go. And there's going to be bumps in the road, but just start. You have to start.
Yeah. What's your spirit animal?
We talked so much earlier about bass fishing and I love the spirit of the smallmouth bass. So there's an answer you're never going to get again.
I love it. That's great. 3 things you're most grateful for.
Today, it's that I woke up today. That's so grateful for that. I'm grateful for my family and I will extend that out to like all of the people in my life that are close to me. Like just so happy that they're healthy. And I'm grateful for the world of opportunity that we live in. Like we live in a time now where you and I live on different parts of this country, different time zones, and we're connected in real time right now. And like, that is an amazing thing that we take for granted every day. And I think it should be celebrated. And I love that we live in a time now that if there's something you're passionate about, you can make some money off of it. And it's super exciting.
Heck yeah. Love that. And final question for the rapid fire round. If you had a billboard for the world to see with your last piece of content on it, what does that billboard read, Chris?
That's a Tim Ferriss question. You've gone real deep with that one, man. I think it would say something along the lines of like, you can do more than you think you can. And I think that people live within these limitations that either they've set for themselves or unknowingly have been set for them by the way that they were raised or where they grew up. And I just think you can do more than you think you can. And maybe you need someone to light a fire under you, like Carrie, or you need, maybe read a bio of someone who really inspires you and realize that like all of the great things that are happening in our world by great inventors or entrepreneurs or athletes or actors or comedians, directors, whatever they are, they're really no different than you or I. They just went for it.
So well said. Crush that rapid fire round, Chris. And brother, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you, man, for sharing your love, your light, your wisdom, your interview, secrets and the questions and how to really show up and be present and your content too, man. Just like, it's authentic. And I think in a world full of fakes, it's so refreshing to see someone like you who just, loves bass fishing, loves wrestling, loves putting out good content that other people can latch onto. So I appreciate you and everything you stand for. I'm looking forward to continue to collaborate and explore synergies. So I appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time and your friendship and Just what a great connection. I'm so grateful to Stu who connected us together and
Yep.
made this
Yeah.
all
Shout out to
happen.
Stu. Yeah, for sure, man. Now, any other thing you want the happy hustlers to take home with them? And go ahead and mention a couple links, and then I'm going to ask you the final question.
Oh man, I don't even know if I'm prepared for the final question. But wherever you're listening to this again, go check out Insight with Chris Van Vliet, my podcast, and chrisvanvliet.com, and wherever you're on social media. If you hang out on TikTok or Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, it's just my name at Chris Van Vliet.
Omnipresent. Boom. Now, Chris, final question. What does happy hustling mean to you?
I think for me, it's just this started with that story I was talking about, being in college and like having that epiphany that, we got to work for, the rest of our lives. For me, it's just being excited for what you're going to do that day. And then when you're done and you go to bed at night, being proud of what you've accomplished. And if you can do that enough days in a week, you win the week. And if you could do that enough weeks in the month, you win the month. And then so on and so on and so on. So that's what it is for me.
Love it. Chris Van Vliet, y'all. That is a wrap. Mic drop. Appreciate y'all watching and listening. We are out. Peace and love.